Hello, Kaz here, back in the box. So this time we're going to look at two things. One is the exciter and the other is applying things like the exciter and any other dynamic effect in a parallel fashion. Normally, if you're going to apply something in parallel, you would normally go here, click, and then find a bass and so on and so forth. There's another way to do this that gives you a little bit more control where things are. So if I go to options and then say create new auxiliary channel. So this comes up. Yes, I could have gone, said create a bass. It creates by itself an aux as it has done here. But that's not what I want. I've created my aux and name it. It's going to be Beatbox Shine. And I'm going to do some things to it. So the beatbox is still there, but I'm going to put some shine and some other things going on in a parallel fashion here. Once I have that there, I go up to, you see the input here. So where is this aux channel going to get its sound? It's going to get it from bass 12. Yeah, so bass 12. Then when I go back to the beatbox, I'm sending to that input. So send bass, and I'm sending to bass 12, which is Beatbox Shine. So now this is sending its music, is sending a copy of it to bass 12, as you can see up here, which has become an input, if you see, for this aux channel. We're going to send a copy of this to this. And what we're going to apply here is an exciter. We find it here in specialized. What does an exciter really do? It creates new textures within the sound, and it can make the character of the sound more interesting. Or worse, depending on what settings you've made. But it's a useful way to make a sound that maybe is dull or not as exciting and give it a little bit more richness in terms of texture. Its timbre will change. And the way it does this is by adding what they've called harmonics here. And there's a dial where it's just a percentage and you can increase the harmonics. But let's look at them in the real sense of what is going on. These are overtones. Whatever sound is coming in at any given moment, that's the fundamental sound. And if you did the class with me where I talked about the overtone series, then you will remember that for every fundamental sound that comes out, or fundamental frequency in this case, there are many other frequency levels which are overtones, which are above. They're incorporated within this fundamental, and they're above, and they move in different octaves, going higher and higher in frequency range. And so you'll find, like, with a note like C, then G will actually be present, but an octave above. And then E, a little bit flat, will be present, and so on and so forth. Excuse me, my voice is a little bit, been doing a lot of videos lately. So there will be another note like E, also another octave above that, and so on and so forth. So the series will go on. Basically, what an exciter is doing is bringing out these overtones to be more audible on top. So it's actually adding. It's not like necessarily just dealing with what is there. It's taking what is there and then creating something on top that actually fits that kind of thing. So it's looking at the fundamental and then calculating what kind of harmonics or overtones that could make this sound richer. But they are sounds which are actually based on what is there. And you can increase the amount of them up and up with this. And they give you also two controls like of color. Perhaps one way to look at it would be that with the color, it will juggle which overtones are being presented. And so you get a different timbre or a different texture of sounds coming through. The texture of your sound changes. And this can be done like through all the frequencies. But with this, with an exciter, it actually is good more in the above frequencies to just give you that shine, just give you that air. And it tends to be used a lot on masters, but you can use it in this case to improve the flavor and excitement within a particular sound. In this case, we're going to deal with this beatbox sound. Okay, so let's have a look at it and see what it can do for us. I'm just going to move it so that I don't want it to bring new excitement in the area that is the voice, where the voice has most character. So I'm going to go from 5K or 50,000 hertz, going all the way up. And then I start to raise those. Before we even deal with this, let's go back and look at the aux channel here. It's going to receive sound that's coming from the beatbox channel being sent via bass 12 as an input here onto the beatbox shine. So if I pull this up, it doesn't mean that we'll hear anything. We won't hear anything unless we send it. But now you might recall that when this volume knob is this side, the send volume, it means that this thing is acting post. You see, we have pre-fader and then we have post-fader. And right now, so it's post, but we want it to be sent before it goes down to the pan so that the volume here does not affect the volume here. We literally want a copy of this thing that going there. It's as if we have done a split at this point. So it's coming, the signal is coming, and then we take a copy of it to go the other side, but it's an independent copy according to whatever volume we've set here. It's an independent copy. It's not reliant on whether this is down or up or whatever. So that means we gotta put it in pre-fader mode. So once it's in pre-fader mode, we can't be messing around because I might decide to do something to this. And then when I do this, then it affects what I've done here. Because if I take this volume down, that means whatever is feeding into the exciter is actually less. And then that will affect how the exciter is operating because the volume that is coming into it has changed. This might be something that you want, but I don't. Why? Because I want the exciter to act exactly the same and give me the same exact shine on this element, whether the volume is low or loud. I want it to be giving me the same kind of results, the same kind of overtones or harmonics as they've called them here. So whatever it's applying and adding into my signal, adding to the character of my sound, I want that to be the same character even at low volumes as it is at loud volumes. And I don't want that to be affected if this volume goes down or up or whatever. That's why the copy that I send here needs to be pre as opposed to post. So, and that needs to be made clear. So that means even if I take this volume down, I'm still going to get sound the other side. Which means now I can work on this sound and get it to where I want. It can be ridiculous or whatever because I still have the original somewhere. So I'll be able to blend them together afterwards. So here we go. Alright. First of all, I've sent too much to it, so let's take that down a bit. Alright. In the morning, break of dawn. Let me try the other color. In the light, and when the sunshine comes up. Now, what I don't want it to do is actually to add me these things in the lower parts of the frequencies. I want it to do this like away from the voice. Above 5K is where I want this exciter to give me something. Alright. In the morning, break of dawn, I wanna bask in the light. And I've really pushed it there. But what I'm going to do to it, prior to it, I want to remove the kick sound of it. I'm going to go in and apply a single band EQ. Simple, but very effective. So a low cut. So I'm going to cut out all the frequencies below, say, 20K. And I just have that. Alright. Maybe it's too extreme. In the morning, break of dawn, I wanna bust. It's like I've got a little bit of a hi-hat there, yeah? And I'll even change the slope to maybe 18 dB. That's nice. Alright. Okay, then I'll switch it up. The idea is now to get this to blend with this so that I get a nice level. But first, you see this one is still going to stereo out. But all the other music, the voice in the music, the beatbox and the EP are going to bass 11, which is the music. So this too should go to bass 11. So the idea now would be to blend these things and get something nice. I'm going to go in there and instead of stereo output, I'll put it to go to bass 11. So that now everything is going in the same place. And then now I'm going to start to balance these two to make them sit in. And in order for me to concentrate on them better, I'm going to mute the voice for now. See when I mute it, drums are not as alive. Yeah, the exciter has given us new textures above this range here, giving it a little bit of a sizzle in those above ranges. The question you might have, as many do sometimes, is like, look, haven't you just like added some high frequencies? Why couldn't you just maybe right here on the track, for example, why couldn't you just go into the EQ and then just add a shelf to the thing? And yeah, you could do that. But now what the EQ is doing is actually just boosting frequencies that are already present within the signal. They're already present in what you recorded. The difference here, when we go and use the exciter, is actually adding new information, new textures that were not actually present within what you recorded. It can have a little bit extra taste to it. It can be more interesting because like the whole point is that maybe the sound is dull and uninteresting and you're trying to give it new character, trying to add to its character or enhance its character by addition of other overtones, not just enhancing those that are present. That's why we would want an exciter as opposed to just raising or boosting a shelf EQ in the high frequencies. And the other question some people have asked before is, okay, why not just apply the exciter direct on the track? Because that will do the trick. But then again, this is the thing. I want to really control those textures that I've applied. I want to have more control of it so that I know how much to blend into it. As opposed to when you apply it directly here, you kind of have less latitude. You can still do it. Yes, it works. But I have less latitude, especially when I want to make changes. It becomes a bit harder to actually make those changes with precision. But here, I maintain the integrity of my original sound. It's all there because it's not that I don't want it. So I want it as is, and then I add new textures to it, as opposed to bringing this exciter on top of here, whereby now I'm changing the whole thing of what I had, which means I may now be playing around with some of the other things that I already have that I want and like. So extending this along, since I've done like the high frequencies, what I could do is like do something to the bass. So I can go and add another bass again. Remember last time we went and created an aux and blah, blah, blah. This time I'm just going to go boom, bass 13, boom. And Logic does it for me. And it's right there. It creates an aux. But it's good to know both ways. So I'm going to say beatbox, bass. Why am I always misspelling things here? So beatbox bass. Remember, we want this to be pre-fader. So it's not like when we're doing the reverbs and stuff, those ones, we want it to be post-fader. This time, it's a totally different thing. We're doing some parallel processing. So I want it to be pre-fader. I mean, you can also do parallel processing like post-fader, but the best way to do it here is pre-fader so that the volumes of the actual track don't affect what you're doing this side. Okay, so I've sent already a copy there, and I'm gonna go in here and I want to like fatten this thing up. Because I already know I want to deal with the bass frequencies here, I'm gonna call up again a single band EQ here and just cut out all the high frequencies. Anything above 700 is going to be cut out. So if I take the volume down of the original, then we'll have this. So I can still cut out a few more. So that I'm practically just dealing with a kick of sorts. With this now chosen, that means I can kind of do certain processing on this to just bring out that sound more. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the amp designer here and call up a bass amp. I'm going to be able to drive that sound a little bit harder than I would if I was only applying it to a whole thing, because now I know it's just operating on the lower frequencies. I can do crazy things with it, creative things with it, and get something cool. Let's get crazy. I'll try to get a compressor involved. And on this graphic EQ, remove all this affair still. Doesn't sound that great. Let's fatten it out a little bit more. So I'm gonna go to the compressor to give it like a constance, and I'm gonna be really heavy with this. I want to go for an FET compressor because it's kind of like these are a little bit more immediate. They press a little bit harder and faster. I'm gonna push the ratio to around 8, low of compression. Not a very quick attack, but quick enough, 10 milliseconds. You see, if I do that, I'm even getting more rhythms going on. Even sounds that were happening in my throat as I did the beatbox, they're actually being accentuated. So you're getting like a double rhythm, yet there's no like a delay or anything like that, as you can see. So it's like tun to good. Oh, I'm even highlighting the wrong track, so you can't see exactly what I'm talking about. So they're highlighting the right track. So now the idea is that this also should go out to music. So now the idea is to balance these three tracks, balance them and make them work well together. So that's the original. I'm bringing a bit of this heavier one. And then the stuff on top. If I mute these two, you'll hear a difference. So I'm going to play when they're on, then I mute and then back on. So you can hear that difference that it's applying. Right now, we're at a risk of being able to ruin our gain structure because this beatbox thing is starting to sound maybe too loud or whatever. And every time we need to make a change, you have to go and kind of like nip all those volumes. One way to control those kinds of things is to select all of them and send these all to a new bus, whereby they will be grouped together to a new bus, like bus 14. So now this one I can call the beatbox all. That one I can send to music, to bus 11. And of course now, if I need to turn the drums down, then I've got that control there. But not only that, I can now process all this whole thing together. Say if I was to decide to put like a multi-band compressor or something like that. And I'm not really going to play around with this right now. That's a whole other lesson. And you look that up. There'll be a video about this. I'm just going to put a preset there because I already know it's extremely extreme. I'll control this output to make sure I maintain a reasonable gain structure. So like, remember with your plugins, as you're applying them, you have to be wary of your gain structure because you have to have a little bit of headroom. So if there's no headroom, you can't actually take these up and down. You can't work. If there's no headroom on the master output, same thing, you can't work. To control that, like on the plugins themselves, when things are getting a little bit too loud, then you should actually be controlling your gain structure from those things as well. So I'm taking these down. Okay, you could say that is working, but is that the best way to actually route it? There's a better way to actually control these things, or another way to control the volumes of those three tracks. So if I select them again, what could also work, if I right click and say create new VCA, I want to use this as just a volume control to control those tracks, the volume of these beatbox tracks. Right now, the option to send to the VCAs is missing, and the way to get that is right click, go to channel strip components, and then find it and add it. So in this case, these are already set to be controlled by VCA1. And so if I play, yeah, simple as that. It's just a volume control. You don't see them moving, but it's happening. So the volume control is there. And also bear in mind that different DAWs will do this differently. So some of them, you can actually see the faders go down. But even though you're not seeing them do that here, it's actually happening in the background. So I can take that volume down. So that's one way you can control some volumes of several things. I find VCAs useful once the tracks are getting so huge, or if you're dealing with orchestral stuff where you have like so many instruments that you're dealing with. In a small thing like this, simpler songs of 16 tracks, even 24, sometimes it's not that necessary, or I might use it just on drums or something like that. You might be already controlling these things properly with or fairly well if they're already grouped somewhere, and you can take that thing down and control them. But in some cases, a VCA is good. And in this context, actually, you could see that the VCA actually helps a bit so that you don't get too much stuff feeding into the group track. Because once I put this bad boy here, the volumes went crazy, even when I was trying to take this gain down, So then it's kind of better to sometimes actually apply a VCA to control those things. So the original was like this. All right. Then when we add the other flavors, I wanna bask in the light, and when the sunshine comes up, you get the idea. I'm not digging what this one did, so let me try something different in its place. In multi-FX here, there's a fat FX. It's a cool thing that can make things a bit, yeah. And just by moving this a bit, just by moving that, I can get like some interesting sounds. Let's add a little bit of distortion to that. I like what it's doing, but I don't like that frequency that is not going. Are you going? So what I'm gonna do is just like pull that frequency out. So yeah, something like that. Finally, let me add some reverb on this shine. This video is already long, so what the heck? Let's do it. It's this one here. Sending it to bus 1, and we make sure it's a post fader. And remember, just up here we can use a sends on fader so that we can see clearly what we're sending bus 1, which is sending to aux 5. I should have named it here reverb, so it's easier for us to understand what's going on with that reverb. So that means when we click here and we're selecting the one that we sent to bus 1, which is reverb, and now we have our fader control that can send to that reverb. All right. In the morning, break of dawn. But of course, the reverb right now is sending directly to the stereo out. That's not what I want. I want it to first send to the group so that it's all together part of the music. So bus 11. Now it first goes to bus 11 and then sent on together with everything else to the stereo out. And I can turn it down itself like that so that I have more control of this. You need more control of this than this, because this you can set and put it in one place, and then you come back and have enough headroom to actually juggle this. Yeah, kind of interesting. So I've gone ahead and even put some, added a delay here just for the voice. And so this is what we've got now. All right. Yeah, something like that. And just in case you're curious, on the output, we're actually not clipping. We're at the top of what we can get, because I put a limiter just so that I don't get things loud, too loud for you, and the limiter is only allowing up to -1 dB. It can't actually clip. So I'm not saying this is how you should mix, but if you're doing things like this, like a podcast or something like that, you're doing your lessons, because some of you are doing lessons, I understand, you should make sure that your output actually doesn't go over a certain amount. In fact, you can do much more processing here. I'm just doing the bare minimum of at least making sure that the level is not going past a certain point whereby it will clip. But at the same time, it also pulls up whatever else is below. So if I have a limiter on, this also helps. So these are just like side things here, but you get the idea. So this video had several techniques. The two main points was to introduce an exciter to you and also to show you some routing examples when you're going to do parallel processing. And that could be parallel compression, which we did in a way here when we compressed the bass side, and then applying different effects that can add character to a sound using an exciter. Which can bring out like different overtones, and then also seeing how you can kind of split a sound up and be able to have like deal with the high frequencies separately and then deal also with the low frequencies on a separate one, but yet the original sound is still intact somewhere else. There were various little things happening in this particular thing. If you have any questions, we can discuss them in the next class. Or perhaps you've done these things and you have another way of doing it. Maybe we can share and discuss those kinds of things. Alrighty then. Take care now.